More explicit proof that the Testimonium Flavianum is a forgery can be found in an Origen passage. I would like to say to Celsus, who represents the Jew as accepting somehow John as a Baptist, who baptized Jesus, that the existence of John the Baptist, baptizing for the remission of sins, is related by one who lived no great length of time after John and Jesus. For in the 18th book of his Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus bears witness to John as having been a Baptist, and as promising purification to those who underwent the rite. Now this writer, although not believing in Jesus as the Christ, in seeking after the cause of the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, whereas he ought to have said that the conspiracy against Jesus was the cause of these calamities befalling the people, since they put to death Christ, who was a prophet, says nevertheless, being, although against his will, not far from the truth, that these disasters happened to the Jews as a punishment for the death of James the Just, who was a brother of Jesus, called Christ, the Jews having put him to death, although he was a man most distinguished for his justice. Paul, a genuine disciple of Jesus, says that he regarded this James as a brother of the Lord, not so much on account of their relationship by blood, or of their being brought up together, as because of his virtue and doctrine. If, then, he says that it was on account of James that the desolation of Jerusalem was made to overtake the Jews, how should it not be more in accordance with reason to say that it happened on account of the death of Jesus Christ, of whose divinity so many churches are witnesses, composed of those who have been convened from a flood of sins, and who have joined themselves to the Creator, and who refer all their actions to his good pleasure. Chapter 47 of Origen's Contra Celsus Origen, here, shows that Josephus sees the John the Baptist passage, but says Flavius Josephus doesn't know of a Jesus Christ. What's more, Origen says Flavius Josephus seeks after the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. He says the temple was destroyed because of James the Just. He says James was a brother of Jesus Christ. Notes that Paul says he wasn't a blood brother, but a follower brother of Jesus Christ. The other mention of Jesus Christ in Flavius Josephus also mentions James the Just. Antiquities 20, 9-1, which has in it, the brother of Jesus, whose name is James, in other words, James is the brother of Jesus, and not the other way around. That Jesus is the brother of James the Just. It is the Lord who spoke with me, see now the completion of my redemption. I have given you a sign of these things, James, my brother. For not without reason have I called you my brother, although you are not my brother materially. The first apocalypse of James. It cannot be a mistake that the Origen passage saying James the Just is a brother of Jesus only as a follower of the club, and not a blood brother. Pauline epistles mentions brothers 1 Corinthians 9-5, as do the other apostles and the Lord's brothers, and Cephas Hebrews chapter 2 verse 11, both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. Jesus not only has brothers but sisters. The fact that it says sisters and not just brothers proves being a brother doesn't mean blood brother, but a follower of brother. Mark chapter 3 verses 34-35 gives a remarkable example. Behold my mother and brethren, for whoever shall do the will of God, he is my brother, and sister, and mother. Not only are you a brother and a sister, but a mother, if you are a follower. So, we're back to James the Just, as first showed above. There's the P. Pseudo-Clementine passage saying believe in what James the Just says and not Paul. Paul does this, and so do the Gospels. We have a competition between this James the Just and Paul of Tarsus. Paul calls himself a Herodian, salute Herodion my kinsman. Romans chapter 16 verse 11. Paul is in cahoots with Roman second-in-command Titus. Galatians chapter 2.3, but neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. Paul is also in cahoots with Agrippa too. Acts chapter 26 verse 28. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, Almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 says a lot of the above all in one chapter. Paul says he knew this James the Just, not explicitly mentioned in 2 Corinthians 12. He says James the Just is caught up in third heaven. Third heaven is like the Greek idea of each planet is in a different crystal sphere. Paul believes that being weak is a strength. He acts weak and tricks you to convert you, yet, crafty fellow that I am, I caught you by trickery. He mentions Titus again. Pseudo-Clementine recognitions where an attack by Paul, Saul on James the Just is revealed. Chapter 70, Tumult raised by Saul. and when matters were at that point that they should come and be baptized, some one of our enemies, 596 entering the temple with a few men, began to cry out, and to say, What mean ye, O men of Israel? Why are you so easily hurried on? Why are ye led headlong by most miserable men, who are deceived by Simon, a magician? While he was thus speaking, and adding more to the same effect, and while James the bishop was refuting him, he began to excite the people and to raise a tumult, so that the people might not be able to hear what was said. Therefore he began to drive all into confusion with shouting, and to undo what had been arranged with much labor, and at the same time to reproach the priests, and to enrage them with revilings and abuse, and, like a madman, to excite every one to murder, saying, What do ye? Why do ye hesitate? O sluggish and inert, why do we not lay hands upon them, and pull all these fellows to pieces? When he had said this, he first, seizing a strong brand from the altar, set the example of smiting. Then others also, seeing him, were carried away with like readiness. Then ensued a tumult on either side, of the beating and the beaten. Much blood is shed, there is a confused flight, in the midst of which that enemy attacked James, and threw him headlong from the top of the steps, and supposing him to be dead, he cared not to inflict further violence upon him. Paul mentions an Epaphroditus at Philippians chapter 2 verse 25, Yet I supposed it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother, and companion in labor. After mentioning Epaphroditus at 4:18, we see at 4:22, that this Epaphroditus is indeed Flavius Josephus's Epaphroditus. Philippians chapter 4 verse 22 All the saints salute you, chiefly they that are of Caesar's household. Epaphroditus is the imperial throne secretary of Vespasian. He funded the works of Flavius Josephus. Both Paul and James the Just are saying Jesus will come in their lifetime. James the Just died in 62 AD. Paul killed him. Either these two were 60-odd years old at the time, or they are a generation after the supposed life of Jesus Christ. I take the latter view, and both of them, living after the supposed life of Jesus Christ, are saying Jesus Christ is coming in their lifetime.